Mr. Smith, I'm going to just start out by asking.
Mr. Smith is my father.
Kevin,
I stole that line from Finding Nemo.
My good friend Kevin.
There you go.
We start out by asking.
Tell him how we got here. That's
well,
the more important
that's
thing.
what I want to ask. To what degree are you doing this interview to get me to stop? I've tweeted you almost every day for a year.
Persistence pays off, kids. This is an example of it right here. He's been tweeting ever since they talked about it. He's coming to podcast movement. So he's been, hey, we'd love to chat. Hey, we'd love to chat. And so I was always like, I'm going to answer him sooner or later, probably
you always
closer.
liked everything.
Yeah, that was my way of saying, like, I know you're there. We'll get there and stuff. And then finally, just the other day, I was like, yeah, come talk afterwards. We'll sit down, chit chat and stuff. So this is persistence. The face, when you've always like, what does persistence look like? This is it. And it paid off because here we are chit chat.
It had plenty of people saying, just stop, you're annoying me. He's never going to talk to you.
Saw a lot of that on Twitter. People trying to talk him off his good idea, but he wouldn't be talked off it. And because of that, here we are.
I've got to say, one of the things I've loved about you always, aside from you being a filmmaker, is I always felt like you were one of my friends in the sense that you were a film fan.
Yes.
So what I want to ask is, you can be a film fan without being a filmmaker. Can you be a filmmaker without being a film fan?
No, I don't think. And that's a great question. And it's so weird because I was just talking about it recently with somebody. When I was over in Edinburgh, we were showing Yoga Hosers at the Edinburgh Film Festival in Scotland. And I was up there chit-chatting. And I started talking about, like, everybody in this room is a movie fan, because it was like midnight. We were having the screening. So I was like, you won't sit in a movie theater at midnight and wait for the Q&A at 1:30 in the morning unless you're a hardcore movie fan. And I'll tell you right now, it's been my experience, and I've been doing this for 22 years professionally or whatever. But if you've got a movie fan, you've got a movie maker. Like, I've never met a filmmaker that wasn't a movie buff first. I don't care who it is, whether it's like me or great directors like Scorsese and Quentin Tarantino. They're hardcore movie fans who still imbibe. So I don't think it's possible to be a filmmaker unless you're a film fan. So I always encourage everyone in those Q&As where I'm like, if you're here listening to me talk about this stuff, you are not a film fan. You're a filmmaker. You just haven't made a film yet. Go out and make your film, because who knows better how to do this stuff than the people that consume it on a regular basis. And you know, it's fine, like the internet is a distraction that allows people to express themselves about movies, you know, and you can be funny and crappy about like crap on movies and stuff. But it pulls you away from, like, there was no internet when I started, so I made a movie. If the internet existed, I probably would have commented on other people's movies. But because it didn't exist, I was like, well, let me try to make one of these movies myself. And now I live in a world where people comment on it. And largely, I get very wonderful things said. And then I get a bunch of people saying crappy things as well. But none of that exists without me doing something first, without me making something. So I always like to tell that audience, like, we're not different. I was you. I sat there watching other people's stuff, and I just got to a place where I was like, why them? Why not me? Like, if this counts as a movie, why can't I make a movie and stuff? Which is funny, because that's what my movies make people do now. They're like, if Yoga Hosers counts, I'm making a movie. And that's a good call to arms. I'm not even insulted by that. I'm like, good, whatever makes you step forward and try your self-expression, because the only reason anyone knows my name or my work, and I've been doing this for 22 years, I haven't had to get a real job, is because it started with the first step of going like, why can't I do that? You know, like, I see people do it, and that's interesting, and I like their stories, but I never saw my world represented up on the screen. And that's where I looked for myself. I never found myself in a classroom, never found myself in a church, man. Closest moments I've ever had to finding out who I am have been in art, sitting in a movie theater, watching a movie, man. It's the dark mirror. You see yourself reflected in a weird way. In reading and listening to music, watching TV. These were the closest moments where I was like, oh, I think this is who I am and stuff like that. So that's within everybody. Everybody, we all consume media. Not everyone wants to make media and stuff. But for anyone that's like a movie fan, hardcore movie fan, where they go see everything and that's what they talk about and that's their passion, like, this is what I do, but I love talking movies and stuff like that. You're just a movie maker. You just haven't made a movie yet. And now we live in the age of democratized technology where it's just like, you don't even have an excuse not to do it. You can pick up your iPhone, you just start screwing around, trying out angles. Let me see what would it look like if I did this? And then it's all about content. It's what you bring to it. And this is a content generation, man. You're talking about, we're raising a generation and we're living in a generation of people that can say what they want to say and do what they want to do. And this is America, and supposedly we've been able to do that forever, but that's not the case. Like, for a long time, you know, some people made it on TV, some people made it on the radio, some people made it in movies, and the rest of us just watched. But now in the age of podcasting, like, that's why something like the podcast movement, you can have a whole convention dedicated to the genre, to the art, to the medium of podcasting, Because that's a great democratizer. That's just talking. You know what I'm saying? And people get scared off of trying cool stuff like making a movie or writing a book or whatever, because people will tell you, well, that's for talented people. You can't do that. It's talented people do that sort of thing. Podcasting is a medium where you can't let the argument of talent stop you anymore, because as long as you can speak, you got a podcast. That doesn't require talent. Like, so often somebody use talent to intimidate or scare you off of doing something you want to try. Like, oh, that's for talented people. There's no such thing as talent. There are people that are born with a skill, but I'll tell you, man, like, skill can take you a long way. Wayne Gretzky was skilled, and he was the greatest hockey player that ever lived. And what a magical, storied career that we'll talk about from now until the end of time. Skill, he was born with a skill, nurtured of course, but born with a skill that defined who he was in the rest of his life. At a certain point, he couldn't play hockey anymore because the body just stops. Like, you know, what he could do as a boy, he couldn't do as a 45-year-old man, 50-year-old man. So eventually his skill took him a lot of places, undeniably, but only could take him so far because the body just couldn't do that skill that he was born with. Not all of us are born with skill. We all are born with will. So skill will take you far, man. No denying it. If you're lucky enough to be born with a skill, God bless. The world is yours. But just because you don't have skill doesn't mean you can't get in the game. We can all play, you know what I'm saying? And will take you a lot farther than skill in some cases. Will take you to the grave. Because there's no part of you that ages out of the desire to fucking express or break through or be that person you want to be. It only gets brighter as you get older. I've found I want to self-express more at age 45 than I did when I was in my 20s because I see the end now. And I'm like, one day I'm not going to be able to say all these things. I don't have as much time as I thought. So let me say what I want to say. And some of it's easy to digest and fun. And some of it's like Tusk or Yoga Hosers, where it's like, you know, they're impenetrable little weird movies. That some people,
Tusk, man.
I like it too.
Tusk,
but
yes.
I believe in Walrus, yes too. But at the same time, there's a bunch of cats who, like, I get it. They look at it and like, this is stupid. Why would you waste your opportunities or something? They seem to think that this is something given by others. Like, they still see it as like, you've been given an opportunity. No, nobody gave me jack. I went and created opportunity for myself. Nobody ever shows up at your door and knocks and says, hey man, you want to tell stories? Here's a bunch of money, go make pretend. That doesn't happen. You got to make steps toward that thing in the first place. So I spent a lot of time trying to explain to people the difference between, like, you know, giving an opportunity and creating your world, creating your own opportunity. Because if you create your own opportunities, you'll be holding to nobody. And then people can't say things like, you shouldn't do this. I'm like, why? As long as I keep my budgets low, make sure everyone gets their money back and stuff, I can do whatever goofy thing I want. Because I'll tell you right now, I don't want to go to my grave one day being like, I should have made the Walrus movie and then drop dead. I want to be the guy that's like, can't believe we made that Walrus movie, and then drop dead, and a little bit satisfied. Because we're not talking about reshaping the world or big important issues, man. This is all micro, not macro and stuff. It all begins kind of with you. So, you know, that's about belief. You can't expect a bunch of people out there to believe you are this thing unless you be this thing yourself. That's why podcasting and stuff like that, it's beautiful. It allows people to be themselves. You get to showcase who you are, what you think, what you believe in, because we all sit around our whole lives, listen to people on the radio, watch them on TV and stuff, and I guarantee you people sit there and go, like, everyone has had this moment. I don't care who you are. Everybody's had this moment. You listen to somebody talk, watch them talk on TV, and you go, I'm smarter than that person. I'm funnier than that person. There are people at home thinking it right now.
Usually when they watch my stuff.
Definitely when they watch me. I meet them all the time. But nobody knows that you're smarter or funny or whatever unless you take that step toward it, unless you jump out there and start self-expressing. I don't mean just like go do a podcast or go stand on a stage or go make a movie. Self-expression takes many forms, you know what I'm saying? Knit a blanket, open a cupcake store, dog walking service, that thing that in the back of your mind, you're like, I'd like to try that. You know, I think I'd be good at that. But you don't do it because the world's not engineered for support. People, you know, just don't want to be like, yeah, you could do anything. You know, I came from a world where, like, I loved my father. He was a wonderful human being, but he was not a dreamer. So he'd be like, see that mountain? Never climb it. You know, you'll get hurt and stuff like that. We weren't encouraged to dream. So, like, now I'm a standing testimony to the possibility of normalcy having everything they want by simply heading toward it. Like, I have no talent, no discernible talent, no abilities and stuff like that, but I've got will. You know, I don't have skill. I've been told that a zillion times by the critics over and over. I know that I don't have skill, but I have will, and will take you a lot farther, man. So, like, being in this place today, it's full of will. You got an audience full of people who are not only were they will, they did. They're all sitting there. Like, we're not convincing people to become podcasters here. They're already podcasters, man. So as you can see, I'm trying to not curse.
That's okay. We have
I caught it a few times.
We're good. One thing I've always wondered, just on a personal basis, you were talking about having a voice, which you always have. You've always been honest about every movie and how you feel about it. But you are also very good friends with a lot of people in the industry who make movies that sometimes inherently you're not going to like.
Yeah.
How do you balance being best friends with a lot of people in the industry, having an honest voice, and sometimes the two not necessarily going hand in hand?
The question, folks, is, did you tell Ben Affleck that you didn't like Batman v Superman? I think.
I liked Batman v Superman.
I did. I've watched that movie. I was just telling him on the ride here 25 times so far.
Wow.
And I keep watching it going, I'm going to love it one day. I know I'm going to love it one day. Yeah, but that's the thing. The older I get, I'm not judgy. I don't care. If there's things that I don't like or don't speak to me, I just generally don't watch them. So I know people who work in this business, some of their movies I haven't seen, and it's vice versa. Like, I love Seth Rogen, but I didn't see Neighbors 2, and I'm damn Skippy sure he ain't seen Tusk, Like, you get busy in maker mode, you don't really get to consume as much. So the things I consume are things that I'm already passionate about, and so at that point, you're already pre-programmed to kind of like it and stuff. Very rarely do you get somebody and be like, oh my God, this is god-awful or something like that. And in those instances, it never pays to tell somebody like, I think what you did is god-awful, because that's all I'd ever hear in life. If everyone was that candid, people would just be like, Tusk, dude, psh, and walk away and stuff. So generally it's easy, you don't have to feel compelled unless somebody comes up to you like, what'd you think? And then I'm honest, like I remember seeing an early cut of Edgar Wright's movie, Scott Pilgrim. And Edgar Wright is one of my favorite filmmakers on the planet, one of the most talented fucking people I've ever met in my life. But it was a long first cut. And I remember, I'm an editor at heart. I'm not really a filmmaker, like I'm not a director, any critic will tell you that, but I am an editor at heart. That's how I do the job. I just sit there and collect shots on set. Like I got that shot, I got that moment, build a scene in my head. So I take editing very seriously. And not like, you don't have to be a good editor, but it's like, keep it tight, because I know how to kill my babies. It's horrible, but that's the expression in the business. When you're an editor, killing your babies means like there's a part of this movie that you love, but it doesn't serve the whole. It just serves your ego. You got to be able to excise it and be like, nope, that's not for everyone. That's just for me. That's masturbation. Let's create the art and stuff. So I know how to kill my babies. Like I'll go in material I love. I'm just like, well, it's not going to serve. So I watched a very long cut of Scott Pilgrim. And I remember talking to him afterwards, and I was like, Edgar, I love you to death, but I can't believe you made me sit here that long and watch like a first cut that long. He goes, what are you talking about? I was like, I would never make you watch a 3-hour cut of something. Like, that's just weird. You didn't think to cut it shorter than that? Like, I got real touchy about it, and he was just like, you sound offended. I was like, I'm not offended. I was like, but as an editor, I was like, I just find it weird that you showed me a very long cut of the movie. So it wasn't a thing. It wasn't like, you prick or something like that. But very rarely does it come up that I see something I didn't like where I'm like, oh, how am I going to tell them this and stuff. You get to a certain age, honestly, maybe it was tougher when I was younger, but when you're like midlife, there's no time for that kind of high scholastic, like, how do I say it? You just don't say it, or you say it and face your consequences and stuff like that. But I've made enough crap that I would know how it feels if somebody's like, dude, what happened, So you tend to just, it is what it is. It's this weird job where, unlike most jobs in the world where you go and do the same thing every day or variations of the same thing, the job is different every time you go to it. Yeah, there are things that are similar, like, hey, there's a movie camera, and hey, there's a trailer, but it's a different self-expression each time. So there's this kind of like, it's wonderful when you have an audience because they expect going into the thing, oh, I'm gonna like it because I like what this person does. And every once in a while, you give them something that is like not for them, more for you, or they don't connect with it or something like that. When you have a fan base that does that, most of them are just like, all right, well, maybe I'll like the next one. But when you have an audience, it's not like a hardcore fan base, but like, I see a lot of movies and I've seen some of yours and then you made me watch this and I hate your guts now. I get a lot of that as well. A lot of like online bile and stuff like that, but that's normal because it's anonymity and people can say what they want. But that's not a reason.
You call a lot of people out too.
I used to be real like go back at them and stuff. And now I do it in a different way whatsoever. I like to top from the bottom. So I'll take like the worst tweet in the world and then make a joke at my expense of the tweet rather than being like, look at this a-hole or something like that. I'll use their joke to then do another joke and stuff.
The lesson to be learned though is that you read people's tweets.
All the time.
You have millions of followers.
What do you think I'm doing this for?
Right, exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Like people, when I meet people in the airport, they're like, "You're so nice. You stop for pictures." I was like, "This is why I did this." Like, you kidding me? Like, this is how I know I'm doing good at my job. If anyone still cares. Right. So Twitter, that's instant feedback any second of every day about how you're doing on your job performance and stuff. And you know, you get to accelerate or decelerate what you're working on based on whether you feel like, hey, nobody's talking about anything anymore. I'm not relevant. Let me do something and stuff like that. It's an incredibly useful tool. That's what I dreamed about when we first started the Viewski website in 1995, late 95. So there was nobody else on the web. It was me and Peter Jackson. He was also on the web answering questions because he made weird movies and stuff. But he got smart and left the web and won Oscars. I'm still on the web and stuff. Because I like the idea of, like, I could talk to people that bought a ticket. Like, because how I could gauge my job performance back in the day was you read a review or you look at the box office numbers, but that don't tell you a story. That tells you a story, but don't tell you the story and stuff. I wanted to hear from the people that bought a ticket. I was like, the idea that we could put up a message board and I can reach out to people who actually paid to see this movie and be like, why did you go on your Friday night? Why would you go see Clerks? Like, that blew my mind. Who are you? Why did you do this and stuff? So early on, I started interacting with the audience because that's who I'm working for. I don't have a boss, man. It was just nice. Like, I like being, like, I don't work for some other asshole. But
that started around Red State?
No, that started like Clerks. Yeah, like the notion, the last time I worked for somebody was like Mr. Topper at Quick Stop, and he was a great boss, but like, I never wanted to work for anybody ever again after that. When you do what I do now, when you're a podcaster, or you make film, or write books, music, if you're a self-expresser, right, you never work, you don't have a boss, you got one boss. The audience is your boss, and if the audience is your boss, you'll never work a day in your life. So it's been this really wonderful, beneficial, mutually beneficial reaction. Some people like the things I do and say or make, and what I love is like their support, man. Like, I look out into a room, chairs are filled and stuff, and people care about what I have to say, or if I'm like, oh, I got this weird story I want to tell. And the thing that I started doing that they know me the most for, which would be like film, is something I do still, but not as much as I do a bunch of other things as well, because suddenly, like, podcasting opened up 10 years into my career. I was like, if this had existed back when I made Clerks, I wouldn't have made all those terrible movies, because I just would have recorded podcasts about how much I loved movies. So instead, like, I got to actually make films, and then led me to podcasting, and then podcasting led me back to movies, like with Tusk and Yoga Hosers and stuff. The podcast started providing the content. So it's weird, man. I love the audience. I love interacting with the audience. Some people say to a fault, they're like, he's got his head up his audience's ass, but like, who am I doing this for if not them at the end of the day? You know, like, sometimes on the road when I do Q&A gigs, I now use the forum to like read scenes from the movies we're doing next, because you could pre-vet this shit with the audience. And some people are like, if you just read your scenes to your audience, how is that helpful? How are you going to get good feedback? And I'm like, who else is going to see this? I'm like, this is the exact audience, so I'm going to run it past them and stuff. It's incredibly helpful, man. Like, and I wouldn't be here without them. That's why I like spending so much time with them and stuff online, because I can't give them back their money. I guess I could, but I don't want to. You know what I'm saying? Like, I love getting money for my art and stuff. But you want to give back. The podcast is an easy way to give back because it's free. So it's like, this don't cost nothing. It doesn't presume upon our friendship. Just listen to the shit all you want. But more importantly, I figured like the thing that I could give back even more is encouragement, inspiration, reminding them as they sit there listening to me or watching my stuff that like, there's no difference between us. Like, they could be doing this stuff. It's fun to watch somebody else's self-expression. It's way more fun to do it yourself. So that's the thing that I like to give to the audience now. That's my payback, man, where I'm like, look, I'll open source this shit, and you'll see exactly how I did it, and I'll tell you how you can do it if you want to try the same path and stuff. I'll just give you everything that I got, because without you, I'd have to work for a living. So this is the way in which I could kind of give back. So yeah, I love the audience, even the ones that like hate my guts, man, because they paid for something at some point. You know, maybe some of them fucking stole it online, just download it or whatever, but they gave you a shot. You know, there's a lot of choices out there in the world for people to spend their time and attention on. And even somebody that's like, I hated what you did. I hate that Walrus movie. They watched it. You know what I'm saying? They made a choice in my direction and stuff. It's a beautiful thing. Even if at the end of the day they're like, crap all over it. Still, it's like, wow, you took the time to watch that? That's so
They
weird.
could have done something else.
Exactly.
I know you got to wrap up, but I do have to ask.
I don't have to. I could talk forever.
So could I. We're both big Batman fans.
Yes.
Normally, if I'm wearing a suit, I have a tie on my Batman clip.
Nice.
We're almost quite literally standing in Gotham City right now.
I said that right as we were coming in, driving to the podcast movement today. We were crossing a bridge that I was like, this is the bridge that the Batmobile came over when Gotham was like under siege, and the same bridge that you see from the Sky Shot when the Joker's like, get out of town, and everyone's trying to get out of town. I was like, we're in Gotham City right now. Somewhere in the city, they flipped a truck in real time. Right there.
Right over on LaSalle.
We were briefly on Lower Wacker where I was like, ah! It was like driving through a movie. It was phenomenal. It's like being on the Universal Studios tour, but it was real because you were in a real city and you could stop and get a hot dog if you wanted to. It's nuts. But yes, this is Gotham City.
It's a great city. Whenever you come back, you have to let me take you on the movie tour where they show you all the, Blues Brothers, Road to Perdition, all the, many amazing movies.
Blues Brothers was my jam, dude. I was thinking about it when I woke up this morning, wake and blaze, right? Wake and bake in the great city of Chicago. And I thought about the many times I've been here because I had relatives who lived in McHenry years ago, and that was the first time I came out here. I was 9. So we went to their house in McHenry, but they took us to Chicago, to the big city. And I grew up next to New York, but my parents never really took us to the city because like there's crime there. So Chicago was the first major city that I ever went to with skyscrapers and stuff like that. And it was a wonder. And I remember my uncle was corny. He was an actor type of dude and stuff. And there was that old dopey joke, but when you were a kid, you were like, where it's just like, does this bus go to the loop? No, it goes beep, beep. That was the joke. So Chicago was like a land of funny things. And then as I got older, Second City was there and stuff. I like the older you get, when you learn about okay, there's 2 coasts in the Midwest, and this is the epicenter of culture in the middle of the country and stuff. Then when I fell in love with the Blues Brothers, dude, Illinois became a big thing. Then I kept wanting to go visit my uncle because I was like, just take me to Joliet, take me to prison, And he's like, no, I'm not going to do that sort of thing.
Come on a mission from God.
But this is my favorite city in the world that I come to with my wife. She almost came with me on this trip, but nobody was there for the kids, so she had to stay behind with our teenager. But generally, we were here for our anniversary last year. We went to a Hawks game on our anniversary and stuff. We once had this amazing weekend here, I think it was doing press for Dogma or something like that, and we wound up doing press on a Friday, but we were here for Saturday and Sunday. So we just walked up down Michigan Avenue. It was February, and it was Jersey Girl, not Dogma. It was completely wonderful weather for February in Illinois. Everybody was out because they were like, holy crap. And I'm walking up and down Michigan Avenue with the wife shopping and stuff. And this was the first place in the world where a majority of the people we passed were like, hey, and hey, the movies, hey, the hockey jersey. People, there was this warmth of hey, it's him. And I always put it to because I'm a layers guy and this is a layers town, you know what I'm saying? So it was hey, he's one of us and stuff like that. But that meant the world to me because this is the home of Hughes as well. And the guy, one of the people who influenced me in a big bad way was John Hughes. I never met him, but his work and stuff. I met his wife and his kids, but I never met John Hughes. But he made his world, Shermer, Illinois doesn't exist, but it's based on a place. But that, Chicago, this area was his world, and he focused a lens on it. You know what I'm saying? That fed me when I was a kid, because this is a guy who wasn't in New York or LA. He was like, oh, this is what life is like in this corner of the world.
You did the same thing with Jersey.
But that's why, because he showcased his world. And I was like, oh, maybe I can showcase my world. Maybe places that aren't New York or LA or Europe are interesting to other people too. You learned that maybe I have something to say by watching others say it before you. We only imitate, right? We see others do it and then we imitate, and then one day we try to innovate. So I spent the early part of my career trying to imitate Hughes. And I remember when I first came to Chicago to do press with Clerks, and the first thing I asked the publicist was did you ever work with John Hughes? Every publicist I ever worked with whenever I came to town was do you ever cross paths with Hughes? And I would collect Hughes stories.
I'm amazed you never met him.
Never. And I so wanted to. They tell you don't meet your heroes because you could be let down and stuff. But I don't think that dude could have let me down at all. I met his wife. And we did an event at Lincoln Center in New York for the Breakfast Club. I think it was the 30th anniversary or the 25th anniversary. 30th, I believe. And so I hosted this show, podcast, where we had the whole cast except for Emilio wasn't there. But his wife come out and his kids were there as well. So I met them right before, we came in, we all took pictures and stuff, and then me and the cast. And then I came in and I met his wife. And I'm a big Hughes fan, so like, of course, I love the movies of my youth, but one of my favorite Hughes movies is She's Having a Baby, and that's the movie he wrote about his wife. So it was like meeting a rock star, and so I was just like, I love your movie. And she started crying because she's like, it is my movie. And then she told me a story about him writing that movie. But just one of these stories that, like, when they made that, it wasn't the internet where maybe she'd be out on the press trail telling that story and shit. They were kind of private people. Like I've talked to his kids about, like, dude, sit down on a podcast with me. Let me just talk to you about your dad. And I'm like, well, like, one day, it's not something they trumpet. So I had this rare moment where she was telling me about the man who wrote that movie for his wife. Not just like, oh, I saw it in a movie theater and I heard that he made it for her. The origin point of him feeding her pages and her reading it and stuff. Oh, I wept. I was bawling. It was so moving. And then I had to go up and do the show, and I had to apologize. I was like, I see, I'm all wet-eyed and stuff, but I met John Hughes' wife and told him the story and stuff. So it's a magical place for me. Like, this place, even since childhood, has always mattered in some weird way to me, even though I'm not from here. But it fueled what I eventually became. Without Hughes doing what he did in this area, I never do what I eventually wind up doing in my area, man. It's important, like, we know in this age of representation, it's important to see yourself. If you could see it, you could be it and stuff. And my world wasn't truly represented. It is now. Fucking white guys, yes, we're well represented. There are bromances everywhere and stuff. But my world wasn't really represented and stuff. Comic book geeks, people that like that kind of stuff. And Hughes' ability to showcase his world and stuff was empowering to me. Mallrats, even in the end credits, it's like this movie's dedicated to John Hughes and John Landis, two people who gave me something to do on the weekends. And as I head into Mallrats the series, that's the thing we're doing next. We're going to do a Mallrats sequel, but instead we're doing it as a series. That's what I've been spending where I've been putting my head, spending the most time rewatching the entire Hughes catalog, because that's what made me make Mallrats. So as I head back into it, I was like, well, what started the first one? I don't just want to, be inspired by what I did. I got to remember, like, what was the meal I ate before I produced this, and it was Hughes. So I've been spending a lot of time in Hughes' world and stuff. So coming into town for this, it was just like,
yeah, get you out of the burbs next time.
I know, right? Absolutely.
Mr. Smith, I know they may have said not to meet your heroes, but I did, and you did not let me down, man.
See?
An honor.
You could do it. You could do it.
An honor, my friend.
I should have met Hughes, damn it.
You should.
Thank you. And see, persistence pays off, man. Well done.
You're fucking awesome, man.
Thank
you very much.
Thank you.